theyeshiva.net.
Welcome everybody to our Shia Gemarah, Masechta Megillah, Daf Tesvav Amud Beis. We are in the middle of the page, the first of the wide lines. Mamash, the first of the wide lines, or actually one word before that. You see, the first of the wide lines, Tesvav Amud Beis, begins Bachatzar Beis HaMelech HaPnimis. Everybody has the place, I hope. You see, Bachatzar Beis HaMelech HaPnimis, Amar Reb Levi. The Gemarah continues now to analyze the verses and the story of Megillah Esther. We are up to chapter 5. Chapter 5 of Megillah Esther. Everybody can ask their questions. Text them to 845-777-4707. Text your questions, please, to 845-777-4707. Your questions, comments, feedback, insights, explanations. What happens in chapter 5? In chapter 5 of the Megillah, Esther actually goes to meet the king. In chapter 4, we learned about Mordechai's grief and mourning, and the message he sends to Esther to please go to Achashverosh. She finally acquiesces and she says, I'm going to go, even if it breaks the law, Shaloi Chados. She asks Mordechai to institute a fast for 3 days. And then begins chapter 5 of the Megillah, Vayhi Bayom HaShlishi. It happens on the third day. Vatilbash Esther Malchus. Esther gets dressed up in royalty. And the Gemarah continues, Vatamoid Bachatzar Beis HaMelech HaPnimis. And she stands in the courtyard leading to the inner home of the king. And then the Megillah will continue that the king sees Esther standing and she finds favor in his eyes, and he stretches out his golden scepter to Esther. She would touch the tip of the scepter, which means he gave her permission to enter, and the story continues. He asks her what she wants, as we will soon see. Amar Reb Levi says, Kivan she'egiya lebeis hatzlamim. The moment Esther came to the Beis Hatzlamim, to the place in the palace where there were tzlamim, there were pagan idols, nistalka imena shchina. The divine presence left Esther. And this is important because before we learned when Esther got dressed up with royalty, the Gemarah says it means she was dressed with divine inspiration, with Ruach HaKodesh. But now as she comes into the palace, the divine inspiration is gone. The Shechina is gone. Now we have to understand what this means. When Esther was going into Achashverosh, she dressed up in Ruach HaKodesh meant she really felt she was on a divine mission. She could feel God's presence in everything she was doing. Now, when she's about to enter into the king's palace, the Shechina is gone. And you know what this means? This means there's a confusion here. There's a darkness here. I am in a place of moral darkness and ambiguity and uncertainty. Am I even doing the right thing? The Shechina is not here. The divine presence is not here. I don't feel Hashem's presence here. If I don't feel Hashem's presence here, it means it's not the place to be. This is not where the heartbeat of life happens. This is not where reality happens. Maybe I should get out of here. There's a very deep uncertainty that sets into Esther. Nistalke mena Shechina. And you know what she says? Esther says, Eli, Eli, lama azaftani. My God, why did you abandon me? This is in Tehillim, Kapitel Chav Beis, the beginning of Tehillim, chapter 22, which begins, Lam natseach alayeles hashachar mizmer leDavid. According to tradition, this is a psalm that Esther said. Eli, Eli, lama azaftani, rachik mishuasi divrei shagasi. My God, why have you abandoned me? Why in this moment when I need you most, I do not feel the presence of God? And Reb Levi, the Marsha says, Reb Levi is learning this from the word vatamoid. Vatamoid b'chatzar beis hamelech hapnimis. Vatamoid means she stood, but in Tanakh, vatamoid also means when something is interrupted. Like it says by the matriarchs, by Leah, vatamoid miledis, which means she stood from having birth, which is a way of saying she stopped giving birth. So something stopped by Esther. She was filled with divine inspiration, and now Vatamoid, in this place where the pagan idols were, Reb Levi says, the Shechina departs. Esther cries out, Lama azaftani, why did you abandon me? Shema tadon sheig al sheig kemezid v'aloines kiratzen. Do you judge somebody who did something by mistake, like somebody who did something willingly or maliciously? Do you judge somebody who did something by coercion, the same way like somebody who did it willingly? And what is Esther saying? So Rashi says, Al oines afal pisha ni boy love me elai oinesu. Even though this time I am voluntarily coming to Achashverosh and I am offering myself to have a physical relationship with him, but you know that I am an onus. I am coerced. What do we mean I am coerced? Rashi says oinesu. It's an oines. We learned before that Esther said, V'chasher avadati avadati, till now I was coerced into the relationship. He would kill me. But now is the first time I'm going voluntarily. That's true. But nonetheless, Esther wanted to go, but the reason she wanted to go is not because she really wanted to be with Achashverosh physically. It was for one agenda and one agenda only, to save the Jewish people. In that sense, she's an onus. Yes, it's true. Nobody's going to kill her if she doesn't go into Achashverosh. But there's even a bigger onus. All the Jewish people might die and will die based on the edict of the king if I don't go into him. That was the greatest onus. There's a type of onus where I'm personally coerced to do a sin. If not, the person is going to be killed. So Esther says, till now I was an onus, now I'm doing it b'ratzon. I'm going in voluntarily. But why is she going in voluntarily? Because she really wants to be with Achashverosh? Because she was hypnotized by him? Because she loved Achashverosh and wanted he should be her husband? No. She was forced because she wanted to save her people, her nation, from extermination. So it's true, when it comes to going back to Mordechai, she can't go back to Mordechai because she went willingly to Achashverosh in the sense that she chose to be with him. But the reason she chose to be with him was because she was forced to save her entire nation, including her entire family. So she says, God, why did you abandon me? As though I'm doing something wrong, as though I'm betraying the Jewish people. Why is the Shekhinah not here? I am on a mission to save your children. I'm on a mission to save the Jewish people. How could you judge me this way? You can't compare a Shoigig to a Mezid and an Oines to a Ratzon. I want to give you just another interpretation that I saw from Rabbi Yonis in Eibshitz in his Sefer Yaris Dvash, about why she's comparing this to an Oines, when it's really not an Oines, because it's a Ratzon. So I explained to you one explanation. I want to give you to his explanation. And that is, remember Esther told Mordechai that I can't go into the king because I was not summoned for 30 days. And if you go in without permission and he doesn't stretch out his scepter, Achas Dosir Lahamis, you come out with a head shorter. He has not called me in for 30 days. A full month I was not by him. That means 30 days earlier, Esther was by him. Now, this conversation happened on Yud Gimel Nisan, because that's when the papers and the decree to destroy the Jewish people came out, as the Megillah says clearly, and that's when Mordechai and Esther had their exchange. And Esther says, I can't go into him. I may die and jeopardize my life because I haven't been called for 30 days. But 30 days ago, I was by him. 30 days ago was Yud Gimel Adar. Yud Gimel Adar. On the 13th of Adar, I was by Achashverosh, and that was the last time I never came back. He never summoned me afterwards. Yud Gimel Adar is the day that Haman chose to kill all the Jews on Yud Gimel Adar. And that's the day I was with Achashverosh last time. And it happens to be that now, as Haman cast a lot, the day that came out to become the day of Jewish extermination, God forbid, is the 13th of Adar. And the decree of Yud Gimel Nisan, today, the king designates the day of the 13th of Adar, lahashmid larag al-abed, to, God forbid, kill every single Jew, young and old. So Esther thought, perhaps the reason that day was chosen has to do with her actions. The fact that a Yiddish Meidel, a Jewish girl, went to Achashverosh and was together with Achashverosh intimately and physically, perhaps that day became a day of destruction, because it's a day of negative energy. That's what Esther was thinking. because that's when it was the last time. And that's what Esther says. How could you say this? I was an oinus. She wasn't talking about now. Now she's not an oinus. But then she was an oinus, because remember, then the king did summon her. And if she would say no, she'd be executed. And she wasn't obligated to execute herself, to allow herself to be killed. That's what Esther means, that it's an oinus. Very interesting interpretation. Esther continues, Shemal Shekarasiv Kelev. Maybe the reason the Shechina departed from me is because I called him a dog. Shenemar, in the same kapitel in Tehillim, Esther says, Hatzila mecherev nafshi mi'akelev yichidasi. Save my soul from a sword, save my oneness, my soul, from a dog. Esther is referring to Achashverosh, save my soul from a dog. And it's inappropriate. Maybe the Shechina left me because I called Achashverosh a dog. And therefore, Chazra v'karasei aryeh, shenemar she'eni mipi aryeh. And that's why in the next pasuk, she calls him a lion. She says, save me from the mouth of the lion. In Tehillim Chav Beis, 22, verse 21, she's like, save me from the dog. The next verse is, what's the lashon? Atzilu mecherev nafshi miyad kelev yichidasi. Save me from the mouth of the lion. She felt remorseful for calling Achashverosh a dog, and therefore she called him a lion. And the explanation for this is that the Chassam Sofer writes, there's two reasons why people respect the king. One reason they respect the king is because they're afraid the king can give them life or give them death, so they're petrified for him. But the Chassam Sofer says the Jewish approach is different. The Jewish approach is that you always have to respect the throne, the position. It's not even so much about the person, it's about the position. You're respecting, speak about the President of the United States. You may love the President, you may not like the President. You may agree or may not agree. But there's something called respect for the presidency. Respect for the throne, respect for the position. Or to put it in more Jewish spiritual terms, it's the Jewish idea that a king is chosen by God, ultimately. This doesn't mean the king is a saint. Sometimes the king is a wicked tyrant dictator. But it means that for whatever reason, this king has there's a divine gift that brought him or her to this position. And that's why when we meet a king, a non-Jewish king, there's a special blessing we make. And what's the blessing? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam, shenasan mikvei doi lebasav adam. God gave a piece of his glory to a human being of flesh and blood, which means we see the kavod hamalchus, glory to the king, respect to the king, is a form of respect to God. The Gemarah says in Brachas 58, Malchusa da'ara kein Malchusa da'rakia. Malchus down here reflects Malchus above. It's God who chose the king, and that's what I'm respecting. This doesn't mean I have to respect his edicts. This doesn't mean he's a benevolent personality. Sometimes he's a benevolent dictator, and sometimes he's a tyrant. Sometimes he's wise, sometimes he's foolish. But there's a deep inner respect for the king because there's an awareness that this is not a mistake. And the Chassam Sofer says the difference between the two approaches is, in the first approach, if you can get away with it, you get away with it because there's no real loyalty. In the second approach, there is a deeper respect for the king, and he says, and that's why the Chassam Sofer speaks about he lived in the Austro-Hungarian Empire under the king of Austria, and therefore the Chassam Sofer says the Jews have a loyalty to the Malchus. And therefore calling the king a dog, Esther felt is inappropriate. It's not respectful to the Shekhinah, and therefore she changes to a lion. Not a dog, but a lion. The lion is considered Melech Shebachai, is the king of the jungle. The pasuk continues, when the king saw Esther Hamalka, and let me quote, Aymedes bechatzer, she's standing in the courtyard. Nasa chen be'einav, she found favor in his eyes. Vayoshet hamelech la'Esther sharvet hazava shebiyadi vatikrav Esther vatiga b'reish hasharvet. The king stretched out to Esther the golden scepter in his hand, and Esther came close and she touched the tip of the scepter. Amar Rabbi Yochanan shloisha malachi asharis nizdamnu l'bayis hasha. Rabbi Yochanan says 3 angels came to Esther at that moment. Echad sheigbiya savara. One lifted up her neck so that the king can see her. Echad shemasha chut shel chesed alha. The other one spread over her a strand, a thread of grace, of chesed, so she could find special favor in the eyes of the king. Ve'echad shemataches hasharvet. And one who stretched out the scepter to reach her. Now this is quite a fascinating interpretation of Rabbi Yochanan. And what's bothering him, the Mefarshim say, the Maharal has a sefer on Megillah called Or Chadash. He says what's bothering him is the wordiness of these verses. It should have said, Esther came to the courtyard, to the palace. We know why she's going. And the king stretched out. Why do you have to have this whole introduction? When the king saw Esther Hamalka in the courtyard, she found favor in his eyes. Yeah, obviously she came, and he stretched out the scepter, which we would understand. He saw her. If she came, he saw her. And obviously he wanted to be with her. And that's why he stretched out the scepter. Get to the point. I mean, we know everything that was happening. It says, when it happened that the Melech saw Esther Hamalka standing, she found favor in his eyes. This means that there was a psachidish here, there was a psa novelty. When it happened that he saw her, it wasn't so simple. And she found favor in his eyes. The pasuk is trying to emphasize a very significant idea. And that's where Rabbi Yochanan says that even though the Shechina left her, don't think that God was not involved here. In other words, under natural circumstances, this whole plot would have failed. Sometimes you take a risk. Esther took a very risk. She had Ruach HaKodesh. She felt she's going with the divine, but now she comes into the palace and God is gone. And she cries, Keli, Keli, lama azaftani. At this moment, she really feels that she's left to her own devices. But Rabbi Yochanan said, in life, there are secret angels, or not such secret angels. You know, your guardian angels who accompany you, and they make the unlikely things happen. You know, some people call it mazel, hashgacha, whatever you call it. But these are the 3 angels that come here. And they do all of these things. They make sure, first of all, Esther's neck has to be lifted so Achashverosh could see her. Besides, a special thread of grace must be spread over her so Achashverosh could take a very special liking to her. And at last, the Sharvet Hazov has to be stretched out so that Esther should actually be able to touch it. And that's why it says, Vatikrav Esther Vatiga Bereish HaSharvet. Esther came close and she touched the tip of the scepter. Again, this is completely superfluous. It should have just said, he stretched out the scepter. We know why he stretched out the scepter. Esther said, if he doesn't stretch out the scepter, you're dead. We know that. Why is it relevant to tell me that Esther touched the tip of the scepter? The point is he stretched it out. Baruch Hashem, she came in. So Rabbi Yochanan is telling us that it's not only he stretched it out, it's that she touched it. There's a certain dread that took her over. Esther recoiled. The Shechina went away. She was alone in the world, a lonely Jewish woman. And she knew that the entire Jewish nation hangs on the balance. And she's completely alone. She doesn't even feel God's presence. You know how you feel at such a moment. And basically Esther is taken over with dread. She recoils. She regrets this whole thing. So the Malach, this guardian angel, has to, so to speak, stretch the scepter, which perhaps means literally, or perhaps it's a metaphor, to be able to make Esther feel that the scepter literally came to her. It's like she wasn't ready to go to it. She was in paralysis. She was paralyzed. But God says, I'm going to bring the scepter to you so she could touch the tip of the scepter. I saw that the Maharal of Prague in his Sefer Or Chadash says something very, very deep. It has to be understood well, but let me tell you what he says, and then you can look it up and dissect it perhaps further. He says, at this moment, for the mission to happen, Esther had to really become connected to Achashverosh. If she's going to have Achashverosh cancel the decree, save the people, kill Haman, this is the moment she has to experience for the first time a real marriage, a real chibur with Achashverosh. Unbelievable. That's what she meant. Till now it was ba'oinus. I wasn't really there. I was there, but I wasn't really there. You know, the famous Zohar, the Arizal says, How did Esther sleep with Achashverosh? The Gemarah asks it. So the Kabbalists say that Esther had a replica, a shade, a demon, like a demon, a shade that looked like Esther, and that shade slept with Achashverosh. So does the Zohar mean this literally? Perhaps. Or on another level, you could say every person has a shed. Every person has demons and skeletons and fake personalities. Esther was with Achashverosh, but she wasn't there. Her soul wasn't there. She wasn't interested in it. It was like almost an external part of her, like a picture of her, a replica of her that was with Achashverosh. They call it a double. Even if it was her physically, because literal interpretation is she was there physically, but she was not there. She was not in this relationship. She was forced. But now for the first time, she's going in voluntarily. Before it was ba'oinus, now it's b'ratzon. What does it mean I'm going in voluntarily? Not only nobody's going to kill me if I don't go into Achashverosh, but it means that I now have to experience him. We have to become one. That's what he says. We have to have intimacy. Real intimacy, real kinship. Only that way we should be able to change the reality. He had to really like her in a very deep way, and she had to, it seems like him in a deep way. And he says, for a marriage to work, there has to be three things. It's interesting. Maharal writes this in the 1500s. So the first thing is, the woman has to feel connected to the husband from her side. She has to gravitate to her. The second thing is, he has to gravitate to her, feel connected to her. And the third thing is, they have to be connected together. She has to feel connected to him. He has to gravitate to her, feel connected to her. And then they have to find the commonality where there's the perfect synthesis and integration and intimacy where two people become one. And the Maharal says that this is why the Chazal gave three methods for betrothal. Ha'isha niknes b'shloisha drachim, b'kesef b'shtar b'biyah. The opening mission of Kiddushin is marriage can happen through three ways. Money, like giving her a ring, and shtar is a document, and biyah is intimacy. And Maharal says it parallels these three types of marriages. Kesef is I'm giving the woman something. I'm giving the woman something of value. And because of this value that she receives, it's not just actual money, it's everything that a husband brings into a relationship. It's represented by this kesef, by this ring, or by this silver I'm giving her, but it's a representation of the woman feeling that she's getting something, and therefore her life is enriched, so she gravitates to her husband. He says, shtar, a document, comes from the word shoiter, which means a policeman, an officer. Shoiftim v'shoitrim. It's interesting. Shtar is a document, but the word shtar, shin tes resh, is like shoiftim v'shoitrim, which are basically governors, officers. And he says, what a husband needs to feel is that he should really be able to give to his wife. The fulfillment of a husband is that he really feels that he could inspire, he can provide, he can nurture, he can protect, he can shelter, and he can become that container that contains and holds his spouse. That's what gives him his fulfillment. He feels that he's like a ruler in the house, a ruler in the sense that I feel responsible for my people, I feel responsible for my country. The husband has to feel responsible for his wife, like a shoiter, like a governor, like a king feels responsible for his subjects. We don't mean in a patronizing or a demeaning way, God forbid, but in the sense that I assume full responsibility and that she feels that he could give her something and she's open to it. When a husband feels that he is truly a leader providing for his wife and his family, I don't only mean financially, but also in terms of stability and confidence and vision, this is what attracts him. And then he says, biyah, intimacy, is about the symbiosis, the integration between the two. So the Maharal says, and for this, there were three guardian angels. What are the three guardian angels? So the Maharal. The first thing, he has to raise her neck. Raise her neck, the Maharal says, so she could see Achashverosh, and she could feel connected to Achashverosh. Or to put it in different terms, she feels raised up by the marriage. You know, you say you have an erect neck, a tall stature. She feels dignified, empowered by this relationship. Her neck is raised. It's not caved in. The second thing is the scepter has to be stretched from Achashverosh to Esther, meaning he's gravitating to her. It's like he throws out, the stick to get her. He's pulling her in. And then there is the Chut Shel Chesed, the thread of grace that the Malach places on her. And he says, with this, it's Chibur Zela Zeh V'Zela Zeh. There's a full connection from one to the other. From one to the other. To put it in his words, when we see each other, we become connected. The one who sees accepts the one that he sees with his eyes. So it's the connection of the one who's seeing with the one who sees, with the observer. And the fact that he sees him is the connection of the observer to that which is seen. They both connect through their eyes. And that's why when Nasa Chen Be'enav Hayaz a Chibur al Shneim. V'dover Zeh Ein Tzarech Levar Ki Yadua Hu Ma'oid B'Pnei Kan Zeh Yesh Kan Chibur Gomer. So there were three elements: Esther connecting to Achashverosh connecting to Esther, and then both of them connecting to each other. Says the Gemarah, V'Kama. How long did this scepter stretch? You're saying the scepter stretched. It was 2 amas, 2 cubits, which would be around, 2 cubits would be around 4 feet or 3 feet, between 3 and 4 feet. And as a result of this angel's work, it became 12 cubits. 12 cubits, which would be around between 18 and 24 feet. Va'amri la, others say, no, al sheish esrei. It stretched to 16 cubits. Va'amri la, and some say, al esrei va'arba, 24 cubits. V'masnisa tona al shishin. A Brisa said it stretched for 60 cubits. It's interesting that the Maharal goes through a whole discussion mathematically, which mathematics and geometrically, what all these opinions are, because it's all representative of something. What's the difference if it's 12, or if it's 16, or if it's 24, or if it's 60? He goes through all of it. It's a very complicated piece in mathematics and geometry, why each one, these numbers are representing certain elements in the closeness of Achashverosh to Esther. We find this also in the hand of the daughter of Parai, that it was lengthened when she wanted to go get the basket. It says, Vatishlachas Amasa. She sent her Amma, which the Gemarah says in Saited Afyud Beis, comes from the word Amasa, means her arm. She sent out her arm, and the arm was lengthened miraculously to the basket, which is also very representative of the same idea, that under natural circumstances, her hand couldn't reach the basket. What do we mean it couldn't reach the basket? Not just physically, but even more politically. Did it really make sense for Batya, the daughter of Parai, to take this basket and bring the boy home to his father? I mean, imagine Hitler had as a daughter, and she brings a Jewish boy to the palace to be raised by the man who decreed that every Jewish male should drown. It doesn't make sense. Her hand couldn't reach it. This is not a feasible goal. You say this is unreachable for you. But the way it works in life is you have to stretch out your hand and let God do the rest. You have to stretch out your hand. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom will make things happen beyond your expectations. You do what you have to do, and then suddenly your hand might be stretched and reach your goals, even though if you would have anticipated earlier, every cynic and skeptic would have told you you're never going to succeed. And what happens? She takes Moshe and she brings him into the palace, and he's nursed by his own mother. All these things happening together is because she stretched out her hand. The same is with Esther. This wouldn't have happened. Esther in herself became paralyzed. And yet you had these 3 guardian angels, including the Sharvit, stretches out. We have this concept also by the teeth of the wicked. The Ksiv, it says in Tehillim, chapter 3, Shina Yisham Shibarta. You broke the teeth of the Rishayim. V'amar Yesh Lakish al Tikri Shibarta Ella Shirbafta. Don't read it only as shibarta, but interpret it as though it was written shirbafta, because every letter, the letters can be sometimes reconfigured, which means you lengthen the teeth. Sometimes the Rasha has teeth, and those teeth have a scathing, wicked bite. And God, shibarta, he doesn't only break the teeth. You know how he breaks the teeth? By lengthening those teeth. And when those teeth become long and projective and expressive, these teeth also get broken, because this bite becomes really, really scathing, and at last it gets stopped. Rashi says that this is a story the Gemarah is referring to. David HaMelech is referring to a story about Og Melech HaBashan, whose teeth got lengthened, and that's how he himself was defeated. The Gemarah says in Brachas that Og Melech HaBashan picked up a mountain and he put it on his head. He wanted to kill the Jewish people. And then ants bore a hole in the mountain, and it came down on him, but he couldn't pick it up because his teeth protruded, and therefore it obstructed his ability to be able to lift up the mountain. Now, however we understand this, if it's a literal or metaphoric, it's this idea that God takes something and he lengthens it beyond what we would imagine, which creates a whole new different dynamic, a whole different situation. Finally, Rabbi Bar Oifrim Mishum Rabbi Lazar Sheshama Mirabba Virabba Mirabba Messiah. Rabbi, the son of Oifrim, said the name of Rabbi Lazar. He heard from his teacher, and his teacher heard from his teacher, that the scepter of Achashverosh was lengthened to 200 amas. 200 amas would be approximately between 300 and 400 feet, because an amma is approximately 1.5 feet or 2 feet, somewhere between 1.5 feet and 2 feet. There are different opinions. So we have here so many different opinions about the scepter, whether it was 2 amas and it became 12 amas, or 16 amas, or 24 amas, or 60 amas. And at last, we have this tradition going back many Rebbes that it's 200 amas. As I told you, the Maharal in Aruch Chadash explains the reason for every opinion and why they came up with these numbers. The Melech tells Esther, Malach Esther Amalko Mavakashasech at Chatzi Amalchus Veseyas. What is it, Esther Amalko? What do you want? Ask me until half of my kingdom, and I will get it done for you. What's Chatzi Amalchus? It's Chatzi Amalchus v'loy kol Amalchus. I can't ask you for the whole. You can't ask me for the whole Malchus, but you can ask me for Chatzi Amalchus. If you want to ask me for all of the royalty to give up my throne, that I'm not going to give you. But Chatzi Amalchus, I can give you half. Another interpretation: V'loy davar shechoitzetz l'malchus. Chatzi comes from the word of choitzetz. Choitzetz means something which interrupts the malchus. I can't give you anything that interrupts the malchus. That's what it comes in between. It interrupts, it undermines my royalty, or my new. What is this? Binyan Beis HaMikdash. The construction of the Beis HaMikdash. The construction of the Beis HaMikdash, Achashverosh said this will be a chatzitza. This will create a stumbling block and a partition. It will interrupt my marriage. Just like a chatzitza, like when you have a chatzitza in your body, it separates your body from the mikveh, from the water. This will block, it will obstruct my malchus, it will undermine my malchus. Achashverosh understood that for his malchus, the Beis HaMikdash has to be destroyed. Remember that by the party of Achashverosh, in the 3rd year of his reign, he dressed up in the priestly blessings and he took out the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash. He made the same mistake that a predecessor, Belshazzar, the Babylonian emperor, made. He thought the 70 years are over. We learned this on Daf Yud Aleph, and therefore he celebrated the Churban Beis HaMikdash. He says building of the Beis HaMikdash might interrupt. It will interrupt my malchus, and therefore ad chatzia malchus v'loy davar shechoitzetz l'malchus. Rashi gives an interpretation that the Beis HaMikdash is considered at the center of the world, and Achashverosh ruled over the world. So therefore, chatzia malchus is that which comes in the middle of the malchus. Like choitzetz would be choitza, like something that's split into 2 parts. Because the place of Beis HaMikdash is the middle of the world, so therefore I can't give you that which is chaitzitz, which is in the middle of my malchus, which would be the Beis HaMikdash. That's a different interpretation. So this is what Achashverosh tells Esther. Now the question is, why would she think that she wants the Beis HaMikdash? Why? He doesn't know that she's Jewish at this point, so why would he even speak about the Beis HaMikdash? She's not a Jewish woman. Later he'll find out that she's Jewish. One interpretation is he was wondering why she came. he thought perhaps she came on behalf of Mordechai, because she grew up by Mordechai. He knew that she grew up by Mordechai. So maybe she's asking something about the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, right? He says, I'll do anything, but Ad Chatzia Malchus. We're not building a Beis HaMikdash, which would also make very much sense, because he's also killing the Jews next year. At this point, he's planning to kill the Jews, so he's going to go build a Beis HaMikdash. Another interpretation is, this is a, homiletic interpretation perhaps. Achashverosh thought, what does she want? She just sacrificed her life to come in here. But what does she need? Why would she sacrifice her life? Unless you're desperate, you don't sacrifice your life to ask for something. He doesn't, what is going on here? She just jeopardized her life. She's not asking for herself. I know she doesn't need anything. She has all the glories of the world. The answer is she must be coming for somebody else. She must be coming for somebody else, meaning she's jeopardizing her life to do something to help another person. Achashverosh says, that quality is a Jewish quality. This is the first intimation that she's Jewish, and therefore he says, but not the Beis HaMikdash. What does Esther say? What does she want Achashverosh to do? She says, Yovei HaMelech v'Haman hayoim el HaMishta asher asisi loi. I'm going to ask that the king and Haman come today to the party that I made for the king, asher asisi loi. And that's what happens. They come to the party, they drink, Haman loves it, Haman is excited, he comes home, he's happy, it's awesome. And we know the rest of the story. That night Achashverosh can't sleep. Ultimately, Haman comes to the palace. He wants Achashverosh to hang Mordechai on a tree that he prepared for him. Ultimately, Haman will be taking Mordechai on a horse throughout Shushan, singing his praises, following which he will be summoned to a second party, because at the first party, Achashverosh asked Esther, what do you want? And she said, I want you to come to another party tomorrow. And Haman is taken to that party, and it's at the second party when Esther spills the beans and tells Achashverosh who she is, what Haman wants to do to her people, which results in Haman's execution, hanging him on the gallows, on the tree that he prepared for Mordechai. But it starts off with Esther asking Achashverosh to come to a party. Now here's a big question. Why didn't she just tell the king what she wanted? She came into the palace, he wanted her, he liked her, he loved her, he stretched out the scepter, she found favor in his eyes. She was obviously not to be killed because he stretched out the golden scepter. Great. He asked her, what do you want? And she Ad Chatziyat Malchus, I'll do anything. Half of my kingdom I'm going to give you. So why don't you just tell him what you want? You don't want him to kill the Jewish people. That's not what she does. She says, I want you to come to a party. Did you ever think of this question? Why did she do this? Why invite him to a party? And at the party, he asked her again, what you want? Great. Say now what you want. Maybe she wanted to wait for a party, drinking, festivities. We'll soon see. But she doesn't even do it at the first party. She delays it to another party, the second party. Why is she delaying all of this? Why don't you do it at the first party? Why don't you do it right when you see Achashverosh? And then you say, no, we're making a party. At the party, at the feast of wine, you still don't do anything. Why? Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Maras Esther Shazimnes Haman. Why did Esther invite Haman to the feast? What was the plan here? What was the strategy? It worked out at the end, and hindsight is 20/20, but we're trying to understand what's in Esther's mind. We're going back to Esther's mind. What's her plan? She wants Achashverosh at a party. She wants to be intimate with him. She wants him drunk. Okay, so why are you inviting Haman? Why is Haman coming to this party? I could understand. You'll tell me she doesn't want to speak to her husband when he's sober. She wants to speak to him when he's drunk. Because when Achashverosh is drunk, you can get more things done. Granted, very nice. Generally, when there's food and there's drinks and people are more relaxed and it's nighttime and they're in a good mood and there's some good alcoholic beverages, Achashverosh will be more receptive to her request. Okay, but then Esther should have went out with her husband to the most beautiful restaurant in Shushan, make sure nobody's there, have beautiful or make sure the right people are there, have beautiful music playing in the background, buy him a beautiful gift, let it be a moment of intimacy, and at that moment you say, my dear king, your majesty, your queen begs and asks you to spare her life. Beautiful. Where does Haman come in here? Why did she invite Haman to the party again? What is Esther thinking? What does Esther think? Rabbi Lezer says, Pachim tamnaloi. She hid traps. She was hiding traps for Haman. Why? Shenemar, the pasuk says in Tehillim, Yehi shulchanim lifneim lefach. May their table develop into a trap. What is this pasuk telling us? This pasuk is telling us that sometimes food and drinks, eating excessively and drinking excessively, can become a great trap for a person. This is a very interesting idea. In middle, when you're eating a lot and when you're drinking a lot, you could sometimes end up in a place you don't want to be. So based on this, Esther felt, let her create a lavish meal and let Haman come there. When you eat a lot, you drink a lot, you get drunk, your true colors come out, you say things you shouldn't have said. Everybody knows that the great action among dysfunctional families or offices happens over a good drink. There's the shulchan that is sacred, and there's a table that brings out all the dysfunctionality in a family or a community, or in this case, in the palace, a prime minister. She said this is a good way. This was her strategy. This is Rebbe Lazar. Rabbi Yeshua Eimer, Mebeis Avi Lamda. She actually learned this from the home of her father. Rashi says, Shama Tinoikus Eimrim Kain. She heard the children say this pasuk. What did she learn? The pasuk says in Proverbs 25, Imrav Sainacha Achileu Lechem. If your enemy is hungry, make sure you feed him bread. And the pasuk continues, V'im tzami, if he's thirsty, Hashkeyu Mayim, give him water. Because that way you are creating and burning coal over his head. Why, if your enemy is hungry, should you give him bread? And why, if he's thirsty, should you give him to drink? Esther understood that this is sound advice of the wisest of men, Shlomo HaMelech. Give him a lot of food and give him a lot of drinks. This is what she learned from the home of her father. Okay. Let him drink, and let him eat, and this shall be good for you. Reb Meir says, she didn't want that Haman should devise a scheme and rebel against the king. Rashi says, this was a very good time for Haman. This was a very successful time. And she was afraid that if Haman has a hunch that Esther wants to nullify his decree against the Jewish people, and Esther would even like Haman executed, what might happen? Haman will overthrow the king. Haman had enough power and enough support to overthrow the king. And if he overthrows the king, then the game is over. So therefore, Reb Meir wanted Haman at the meal. She didn't want to keep Haman away, and if he could suspect Esther is... remember, Haman was the closest person. He knew everything. You know, he was right there. He was the prime minister. He was second in command. He was greater than all the other ministers. She wanted to keep him close. He shouldn't have an inkling something is going on. He could rebel against the king, and it'll all be over. Rabbi Yehuda says, he didn't want anybody should know that she's Jewish. If Haman would have known that she's Jewish, and Haman therefore would understand that she's going to try to persuade the king's opinion, he may create a much earlier date to exterminate the Jewish people. He may come up with some plot in order to implement the genocide. He doesn't want anyone should even know that she's Jewish. She's bringing Haman, the Hitler of a generation, to a party. Nobody thinks she's Jewish. Fascinating. Reb Nechemia said, Jews shouldn't say, oh, we have a sister in the palace, and they will divert their minds from praying to God. In other words, Reb Nechemia says she didn't want the Jews should become complacent and smug and said, don't worry about it. The first lady is Jewish. The first lady is Jewish. What is Achashverosh going to do already? And therefore, they won't take it seriously. And they're going to take away their mind from Rachamim. They won't daven. They won't ask for mercy. She does not want that to happen because she knows the power of the tefillah of the Jewish people. And she also knows that Achashverosh doesn't run the world, God runs the world, and therefore we must have the prayers of the Jewish people. She may only be the conduit, and she's afraid that her presence in the palace will make the Jews feel complacent. We have a sister. We have a sister in the palace. So what does she do? She invites Haman to the meal. When the Jewish people hear who came for the meal, she invites Haman, the arch anti-Semite, she invites to the meal. Oy, 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 Esther is a self-hating Jew. Esther is one of those despicable Jews who will sell her mother and her father and her cousin and her soul to the devil. How does a Jew invite Haman to a party? Mainly your husband, but Haman, the instigator, the initiator. The Jews gave up on Esther. And they said, we have to go to God. Wow, that's why Esther did it. Esther was ready for this, which means the Jews will accuse her of the ultimate betrayal, betraying her people. Why? Because she couldn't care less about her people. She is so assimilated. She's what you call today a self-hating Jew who identifies with BDS and all of the worst enemies of the Jewish people. They gave up on Esther. Esther is not one of ours anymore. And they'll go to God. This was her intention. She was so Jewish, but she was ready to give the delusion that she's a self-hating Jew. And Haman is her new friend. Rabbi Yossi says, she wanted to have Haman around. When Haman is around, she could monitor him, she could scrutinize him. Maybe she could have him do something that will cause him to stumble, which she actually did. Rashi says, maybe she could cause him to stumble in the presence of the king and make some tragic error for him. Just have him around. Reb Shimon ben Manasseh says, maybe God will feel how desperate the situation is and create a miracle. Rashi says, I have to get close to the greatest enemies of the Jewish people. And that will evoke compassion. Me, Esther, I have to be close to these people. Inami or or God will see that I have to flatter this Russia and completely denigrate my glory as a person, my Jewish honor, flattering Haman HaRasha, inviting him to parties. And this will evoke the compassion to do a miracle. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says, Asbir loy panim. I'm going to show such favor to Haman. I'm inviting him to the party. I'm going to show him affection. You know what's going to happen? The king will become paranoid. Ooh, Esther has a new man. Esther is playing games. Esther is cheating. Why is she inviting Haman to a party with her husband? Why are you bringing another man? And not only that, she made sure to show affection to Haman. She likes Haman. She honors Haman. She respects Haman. Even when she goes out with her husband, she needs a man there. And what's going to happen? Yeharig huvihi. They'll both be killed. Haman will be killed for taking away the queen, and the queen will be killed for betraying her husband. If Vashti was killed for not showing up at her husband's demand, Esther will certainly be killed for promiscuity with Haman. No, Haman will be killed, Esther will be killed, but the decree will be annulled. Haman will be gone, and the Jewish people will be able to be saved. Rashi brings here that there is a tradition that when a minister who made a decree was killed, his decree was also cancelled. So the decree will be cancelled. Now, even though we see that later, after Haman was killed, Esther still had to plead to cancel the decree, is because what she was pleading for is to give the Jews the right for self-defense. They should be able to fight back. That was a special request that she had. They should be able to fight back. They should be able to actually confront those who want to kill them. At least some Mefarshim explain it this way. I once saw an interpretation of somebody, and he said, think about what Reb Nechemia said, think what Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said. Reb Nechemia said Esther was ready to be perceived as a self-hating Jew who betrayed her people. and invites Haman to a party so that the Jews shouldn't rely on her and they should go to God. They should daven to Hashem to nullify the decree, because she understood that is what is most vital. Her role is simply to bring God's salvation down into this world through the natural means of diplomacy and politics and familial relationships. But ultimately, you need the Jews to ask Rachamim. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says she was ready to die. But now I want you to understand how she was ready to die. If Esther would have been killed because Achashverosh would think to himself that she's in love with Haman, what would the Jews say about her? They wouldn't know what she was thinking. They would think that Esther loved Haman more than Achashverosh. Haman is a Hitler. So this Jewish girl, not only did she end up in the palace with Achashverosh, you could say she was forced, but she developed an intimate romance with Haman HaRasha, to the point that she left Achashverosh to play games with Haman, and because of that she was killed. And forever, her name would go down in infamy about the levels of depravity to which a Jewish soul can fall. And nobody would even have a hunch that she did this all to save her people. And this is the ultimate Mesiras Nefesh of Esther. It's such a moving interpretation. It wasn't that she was ready to die. She was ready to die and her name would be disgraced for all of eternity. She would become the symbol of an infamous Jew who is so disassociated, who is so alienated, who is so careless, who is so apathetic, that she's ready to go into a romance with Haman, the arch enemy of her own people, the arch enemy of Mordechai. What a shanda, what a busha, what a shame. Little would anybody know. She cared about Haman less than the Jews cared about Haman. She despised and loathed Haman as much as they, and she did this all as a plot to get Achashverosh jealous, so he should kill Haman and kill her in the process, and the Jewish people would be saved. And that's why it's called Megillah Esther. It's not called Megillah Mordechai. It's not called Megillah Mordechai Esther. It's not even called Megillah Esther or Mordechai. It's Megillah Esther. Mordechai planned, Mordechai led, Mordechai was the great leader. But the one who sacrificed everything and put everything on the line was the person on the front lines. And that was one Jewish girl named Esther. One Jewish woman named Esther. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha takes Rabbi Nehemiah's idea. Let the Jews think that I'm a friend of Haman and I betrayed them. I'm self-hating, but they'll go to God. And he says it's even further. Let the Jews think I actually wanted to marry Haman and I had a romance with Haman, an intimate romantic relationship with Haman. They would think so, but the Jewish people will be saved. First of all, they'll know. You don't even have to say what Rashi says, that Haman would be killed, even if Haman wouldn't be killed. I mean, you don't have to say that if Haman is killed, Gemarah will be canceled. No. Even if not. But if Haman will be killed and Gemarah will be there, Esther will also be killed. They know that they can't rely on anybody. Just like Rabbi Nehemiah says they can't rely on anybody, but over there, they think that Esther is just a friend of Haman. Here they would think there's nobody to rely on. Esther had a romance with Haman. And now she's dead, but they're going to now turn to God and they're going to realize this Esther, we never could have relied on her. Now she's dead. We anyway can't rely on her. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha is adding a whole new dimension to Rabbi Nehemiah. Rabbi Gamliel says, Melech hafach v'chan haya. Achashverosh was a hafach v'chan, meaning he would constantly change his mind, very ambivalent person. So Esther thought, this guy is impetuous, he's impulsive. So maybe at the meal I'll be able to entice him to get rid of Haman. But if Haman is not there, the next day he'll change his mind. He's a hafchafan, he goes back and forth, back and forth. He's an indecisive person. So that's why she had to have Haman at the party, because she wanted him to be ready. If she can get Achashverosh impulsively to get rid of this monster, he'll be able to do it right away. Because if you delay it, this guy changes his mind. Rashi says, "Hafach v'chaya choyze b'diburei amra shema uchel lefatosei lahargev im lo yeh mizum and taver hashav v'yachzer b'ay." If he's not going to be right there to get killed, a few hours later, Achashverosh is going to have a change of heart, and it's all going to be over. That's Rabbi Gamliel's position. Amr Rabbi Gamliel said, "Adayin srichin anu l'modai." After all these reasons, we still need the reason of Rebbe Elazar Hamudoy the Tanya, Rebbe Elazar Hamudoy me kinase b'melech kinase b'sar. By Esther inviting Haman to the party with the king, which basically raised his prominence as though he is as prominent as the king, she made sure that the king became jealous of him and all of the ministers became jealous of him. In other words, Esther had here a plot. That's why she invited Haman and nobody else. She wanted to raise up Haman to the point that the king should get jealous of him. This guy is too powerful, and all of the ministers should get jealous of him. And Rabbi Gamliel says that all of the other reasons ultimately need this reason. It also explains why she didn't invite anybody else. She invited Haman and nobody else. Right? So, because there's one objective here. She wants everybody to be jealous of this man. Rabba Amar, these are all Tanoim. Now we go to Amirayim. Rabba says, Lifnei Shever Goyen. The Pasuk says in Mishlei chapter 16, before breaking, there is always arrogance. You know, there is a certain mental illness. Somebody has a high, and you know after such a high, a low is coming. In life, Lifnei Shever, before a person is shattered, Goyen, they always become arrogant. When somebody becomes so pompous and arrogant, you know, this is the tipping point. They're really going to break. This is it. They're going to break. Lifnei Shever, before being broken, Go'in. There is always that great, great arrogance. You simply become so arrogant, so full of yourself that, you know, the bubble just deflates. It's too much. So Esther understood, if I want to break Haman, I have to make him much bigger. I have to make him more pompous, more arrogant. I got to raise him much, much higher. How? I bring him into the intimate circle, into the intimate relation between Esther and Achashverosh. Haman comes in there. Now he reaches the highest place of arrogance. He reaches the highest place of arrogance. Now Shever. Now he can be broken. Abaye v'Rava d'Amri Travayu. Abaye and Rava both said. It's based on a verse in Yirmiyah chapter 51. B'chumam ashis es mishteyem. Basically, in their warmth, I will make feasts and get them drunk. They will celebrate, but sleep forever and never wake up. Basically, this is a verse in Yeshaya that speaks about, in Yirmiyah, about the defeat of the Babylonian king Belshazzar, who fought with Cyrus and Darius. They tried to conquer Babylonia. He defeated them. When he came back, he had a party. They were exhausted. They drank. They got drunk. And that night he was killed. So Abaye and Rava said that Esther learned from this. She learned from this prophecy of Yeshaya once again that the downfall of wicked people happens at parties. V'hishkartim, I'm going to get them drunk. Ashkechei Rabbi Baravua Eliyahu. Rabbi Baravua met Eliyahu. Amalai, and he says, Kaman chazya Esther v'avda hachi. We had so many different opinions. Tell me the truth. Which opinion is right? Which one really captured what Esther saw, and what she did was because of that reason? Because we have so many different opinions. How many opinions did we have? Rebbe Elazar said it was a trap through food. Rabbi Yeshua said she learned from a pasuk that you got to give your enemy to drink. That's number 2. Reb Meir says she was afraid of a grand mutiny. That's number 3. Rabbi Yehuda says she didn't want that anybody should know she's Jewish. That's number 4. 5 is Reb Nehemiah. The Jews shouldn't be smug and rely on her. They should daven themselves. Reb Yossi is number 6. She wants Haman around constantly. Number 7 is Reb Shimon. Maybe God will feel her humility. Reb Yeshua is 8. She wanted to get killed with Haman because of the suspicion of a romance. Reb Gamliel is number 9. He's always changing his opinion, is indecisive. Reb Elazar Hamudoy is number 10. She wanted to make the king jealous of him and all the ministers jealous of him. Then you have Rabbah as number 11. Before you get broken, you reach your ultimate arrogance. And finally, Abaye and Rava is number 12. She learned from the Navi about Belshazzar that what? During the party, that's the time when he can be defeated. Some of the reasons are very similar, even though they bring different sources and there are subtle differences. So Rabbi Baravua meets Eliyahu Navi, and he wants to know who got it right. Which one of these Tanoim and Amirayim got it right? Amar le, Eliyahu says, Kechuli Tanoi ukechuli Amirayim. It was like all of the Tanoim and like all of the Amirayim, meaning all of the reasons are true. Esther did it because of all of the reasons. It's not like one of them was right, speculated correctly, and one of them was wrong. No, they're all right. This is what Eliyahu Hanavi explained to Rabbi Baravua. Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin says, why did he ask this question here? The whole Gemarah is filled with arguments. Every page of the Gemarah, he says this, he says this, he says this, he says that. Why don't you ask Eliyahu Hanavi who's right? The answer is because the Gemarah tells us in Eruvin 13, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. Both are right. Both of them are saying the words of a living God. The halacha can only follow one opinion, but every perspective has truth to it. Every perspective has divine authenticity to it, because the rainbow doesn't have one color. Truth doesn't only have one color. Beis Shammai is the truth of Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel is the truth of Beis Hillel. Yes, there's a higher truth which becomes the halacha, but every opinion has a truth to it. It's called a different perspective, but they have truth to it. So that's why you don't ask about every argument who's right. They're both right. Now you have to figure out the halacha, what we do. But they're both right. Here suddenly, Rabbi Baravua has an argument, 12 opinions, and he wants to know who's right. The answer is, if they're arguing about something in Torah, divine wisdom, so yes, there's a divine truth that's manifested through this angle, there's a divine truth that's manifested through this angle. Beis Shammai, for example, usually is strict. There's a quality called gvura. It says in Zohar, Beis Shammai is gvura. Beis Hillel is chesed. We have different personalities. From a perspective of gvura, of discipline, this is the right thing. From a perspective of affection and love and chesed and grace, this is the right thing. And we each know there's a truth in this and there's a truth in this. You have to have a balance. There's something called Chumrei Beis Hillel and Kulei Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel was sometimes stringent and Beis Hillel was sometimes lenient. Beis Shammai was sometimes lenient and Beis Hillel was sometimes stringent, because you have to be able to be flexible and reasonable. You can't get stuck in a certain pattern in life. But here they're arguing about something else. They're arguing about Esther's brain. They're trying to take an X-ray or an MRI of Esther's brain. What was she thinking when she went into the king and she invited him and Haman to the party? What was she thinking? Here, he wants to know who's right. What was Esther really thinking? What was Esther really thinking? That's the question. Was she thinking that it's going to be the party will get him drunk and he's going to say something stupid? Was it Esther thinking that she wanted the Jews to feel they have no friend? What was Esther thinking, that she's going to be assassinated together with Haman because of this romance that Achashverosh is going to suspect? What was she really thinking? And this is what Eliyahu Hanavi told him, that Esther is a shtik Torah. Esther is Torah. The Gemarah says, Esther min ha-Torah minayin. Esther is Torah. Esther's life was full of Torah. Esther's life was an embodiment of Torah. And therefore, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. So all of the opinions about Esther are authentic. All of the opinions about Esther are true. Let me take some questions. You can ask your questions at 845-777-4707. 845-477-4707. We'll take questions. Does the Shekhinah really leave someone from minute to minute? Is it something we put on ourselves for a variety of psychological reasons? Or the Shekhinah is really there, we're just not open at that particular moment because we are putting limitations to know that it's really there. It's really there, maybe just concealed for the minute. Yes, when we say that the Shekhinah departs, the Shekhinah never departs in a way that God is not there. God is everywhere. But it means it's a concealment from the person's perspective. Esther couldn't experience the divine presence, and that's why she was lost in that moment. It was too terrifying. It was too overwhelming. Esther was so alone, and that's why she needed that special prayer, Keli, Keli, Lama Azaftani, and that special assistance. Moshe, there were many reasons Esther had to invite Haman to the meal. Ultimately, when a thing is right, there can be many reasons to justify and support it, like the 70 facets of Torah. Yes. All the interpretations from the sages about what Esther thought are fascinating. Too bad we don't know from her what she was thinking. Maybe all of it. All the interpretations were somewhat correct. Very complicated. Would be great to know from her. That's exactly what Eliyahu Hanavi said. That we do know. Kechulu tanoi, kechulu amirai. And really, I think we're seeing a major theme in all these reasons, even though they're manifested in different ways. But there is a few themes that come out in these reasons. One theme is she wants to get Haman in a trap. She wants to get Haman stuck. The question is how she's going to do it. And Esther brilliantly is going to play on Achashverosh's paranoia. If she can make him paranoid and make him feel that Haman is taking Esther away from him, and Haman is interested in Esther, and Esther is more interested in Haman than in Achashverosh, she would have fulfilled the goal, because then Achashverosh would kill Haman, and ultimately the Jewish people could be saved. I want to tell you a fascinating interpretation I saw from the Meshech Chachma. I think it's also in the Malbim, and that is as follows. If you look at the Megillah, when Esther invites Achashverosh to the first party, she says, Yavoy hamelech v'Haman el hamishta asher asisi loy. The king and Haman should come to the party that I made for him, for Achashverosh. In other words, it's a feast I made for the king, and I want Haman and the king to come. At the party, when Achashverosh says, what do you want, was not deaf to this nuance. The first party she made for me. The second party is already made for both of us. Ooh, Haman is taking over. Haman is becoming very, very big. Haman is becoming very, very great. We could see here the theme of the jealousy that's being triggered. Because he fed my paranoia. This Haman who always made sure to feed my paranoia, because this is how he got power. And he was the one who was in control. He is the ultimate man whom I'm supposed to be paranoid. Esther played Achashverosh's weakness and Haman's strength against each other. And as a result of that, she managed to defeat him. So, Eliyahu Hanavi says, all of these interpretations are true. Esther had all of this in mind when she invited Haman to one meal and then to a second meal. It also explains why there was a second meal, because the second meal only uplifted Haman even greater. It only made Achashverosh more suspicious. It only made Achashverosh more fearful that Esther is really getting involved with something. One party you have Haman, and now a second party you have Haman, and the second party is not only for me, it's also for him. Suddenly he's an equal mechutin in our family. Suddenly you put him on the same level like the king. Oh my God. Which also explains literally why the night after the party, Achashverosh couldn't sleep. He had insomnia. You also wouldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep because he was wondering what is going on, Does Haman want to kill me? Does Esther want to kill me? Are Haman and Esther joining a plot together to kill me? What are they doing here? What are they doing? Did I lose my wife to Haman? Is Haman really taking over? How close are they? I mean, this is crazy. There was one party, now she wants a second party. That's why he couldn't sleep. That's on a basic level. You could say why Haman couldn't sleep. This insight I heard in a shir from Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, Rabbi J.B. Soloveitchik. He also says, when you read the Megillah, you can see how paranoid Achashverosh is. Why do you make a party 187 days? Because you want to please everybody, because you're a paranoid person. You want to be on everybody's good side. He says, this was the weakness of Achashverosh. Bixen and Seresh wanted to kill him. They were assassinated. So that only accelerated his paranoia. That's why it says, after they were assassinated, he raised Haman. What's the connection? The answer is because he saw that people want to kill him. Now his paranoia became much stronger. And Haman was in the position where he said, I'm going to protect you. And Haman created this fortress around the king. Everything went through Haman. Haman became the ultimate confidant. What goes into the king, what goes out of the king, every connection, every relationship, he controlled everything. And basically, that's how he became the most powerful person in the Persian Empire. That's why he can come to Achashverosh and say, you're afraid? You know who you should be afraid of? You should be afraid of the Jews. You should be afraid of the Jews. Because you got a fifth column in your army. This is not good. Your Malchus is in danger. You see what Haman is doing the whole time? This is what he's doing. And Haman is the ultimate arrogant person. If you want to understand this in terms of modern history, Rabbi Soloveitchik said, what Beria was to Stalin, Haman was to Achashverosh. Stalin was paranoid beyond paranoia. He killed 40 million people. Beria was to Stalin what Haman was to Achashverosh. This was the psychological brilliance of Esther Hamalka, that she basically brought Haman all the way to the top. And finally, she made Achashverosh become suspicious of that last one person that he was never suspicious of. Who? Haman. This man, who's supposed to be the closest man, really, had me eating out of his mouth. He had me manipulated. He had me wrapped around his finger, or his finger wrapped around me, completely controlling me. Look what's happening now. My own queen is with Haman. Wow. This was Esther's genius, Esther's brilliance. She knew that if she comes to Achashverosh and says, save the Jews, they're good people, it's not going to work. The guy is so paranoid. He's seeking survival, and Haman is feeding him this falsehood. So Esther understood she won't win that way. What did she have to do? She had to confront that core issue. She took Achashverosh's paranoia and she made him realize the greatest person you must be paranoid from is Haman. The moment she did that, Haman lost his grace, and the story changed forever, and we are here today. My dear friends, we're going to take a break now. This shir is going to resume Monday morning. Monday morning, 7:45, here on the yeshiva.net, Be'ezer Hashem. I want to invite you all Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. We're going to have a live stream, a special children's program. We had one yesterday on Thursday. It was really, really wonderful with many, many children. They asked many, many questions. It was great. And I look forward to see all of your children, or they could see me. And if you're a child at heart, you're welcome to join us Sunday at 4, the yeshiva.net. And then Monday morning, we'll have our shir at 7 and our shir at 7:45. The last comment is, pride comes before the fall. Lifnei shever going, that's a verse in Proverbs. Pride comes before the fall. Mishlei Tazayin. Before the fall, you have pride. You go up a little too high, and then ultimately you crash. So she brought Haman up so high, and ultimately he could crash. Have a wonderful day, a beautiful Shabbos. Stay healthy. A lichtige Shabbos, a freiliche Shabbos, a gesunte Shabbos, and only blessings to you and all the Jewish people on our entire planet. Bye-bye. Have a good Shabbos. Thank you.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.